Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to the showdown between the Skaven led by Lord Skrolk and Mousillon, who's going to be led by the Red Duke. So without further ado, let's jump right into this match and have some fun. So in the front line, I do have a couple groups of Stormvermin with halberds, and by Skaven standards, they do have relatively good leadership here at 74, but I think their base is like 65 or something. It's actually 60. So because of the nearby abilities and their flanks being secured, it's going to be sitting at between 70 and 76, give or take. But regardless, in the front line, they're going to be somewhat durable with 90 armor, so against skeletons and zombies and a lot of those low-tier Vampire Counts troops, they're going to be very, very tanky. And on top of that, they have a bonus versus large, so if they're facing off against like Cryptors or Vargulfs or other spooky, scary Vampire Counts monsters, Blood Knights, all kinds of stuff like that, they're also going to do well in that exchange. They're not going to be doing like the heavy killing in my army, but that's one of the big issues for the Skaven in this matchup. All of the Vampire Counts troops, for the most part, cause fear. If we look here, the Skeletons cause fear, and Skaven are, of course, a pretty low leadership faction. So having a more durable front line, I think, is very important, especially if you're going to be utilizing missile play and artillery and all kinds of stuff like that. So in total, we do have 3 Stormvermin with halberds here. We have Lord Skrolk as our Lord. He's definitely always pretty much, I don't know, Tretch can be good situationally if you're really worried about being like Lord Snipes, but I think like by far Skrolk is the best pick. You're going to get your caster and you don't have to bring a second caster. On top of that, Libra Bubonicus is really good at taking out Mortis engines, Vampire Counts heroes like the Red Duke, just a very, very solid ability. On top of that, we do have the Rod of Corruption. We have the Plague, so we're going to be trying to get some damage on the Vampire Counts blob, Vermintide, and also Blessed with Filth and the Pestilent Breath. So definitely some fun stuff. And we're trying something a little bit different. We're going to be bringing 2 groups of Night Runner Slingers. So these guys have 140 range, so definitely a little bit better than the Gutter Runners with poison, like the Skirmishers. And I'm hoping to just pick off Cryptors, go after Vargulfs, go after Mortis engines, and just have some kind of pressure on my opponent. So in total, we have 2 groups of those. And they're going to be protected by the big old Hell Pit Abomination, which I do like in this matchup. It can, do pretty well against Terrorgeists. It does regenerate, so even if they use the breath attacks on it, it's going to be somewhat tough to get rid of. The one thing you have to be really careful about in the Vampire Counts matchup is making sure he doesn't rout off early due to like fear, or, well, not terror, but or fear, but just getting his leadership tanked by taking a lot of damage. And then from there, your opponent could just chase him off with like Fellbats or Hounds, which is really, really rough. So definitely want to be careful with that. 3 groups of Rat Ogres just to give us some AP, because obviously the Stormvermin, yes, they can get through Graveguard, but they're not going to be the best at that as they are a halberd unit. That's what the Rat Ogres are for. In the back, we do have a Warp Lightning Cannon guarded by Clan Rat Spears, and that is pretty much it. So for my opponent, he does have 4 groups of Fellbats, which I think is a very good choice. Just put a Fellbat here, put one here, and right as his Mortis Engine is starting to approach the main line, that's going to buy the Mortis Engine quite a bit of time to, fight unimpeded. So definitely like that from my opponent. For his main army, 2 skeletons on the flanks, a front line of Graveguard. It looks like he did bring some great weapons, which is actually going to be really, really good against my Stormvermin. So definitely solid stuff from the lad here. 2 White Kings here on foot. He does also have the Red Duke, I think, on foot. So probably a little bit worried about getting like sniped by like Warp Lightning and things like that. So he just went very wide and just went on foot here. So a Graveguard. In the back, he does have Skeleton Spearmen against Rat Ogres. Mortis Engine. And where's the Red Duke? I'm like looking around. He's just being spooky and hiding somewhere. Honestly, I have no idea where the Red Duke is. Like, I'm looking on the mini-map. Oh, there he is. Okay, he's, like, leading the Sternsman here on foot. And as far as spells go, it looks like Invocation of Nehek as well as Raised Dead. So, yeah, should be fun. Anyways, let's get this battle underway. So, right now, you can see the Fellbats are going to be swooping in. So, he does commit 2 Fellbats right now. And they're going to be jumping on the Warp Lightning Cannon. And you can see the leadership's already down to, like, 41. So, I really wanted this online, so I pull in the Rat Ogres. And they're just going to start clubbing some of these bats out of the air and actually killing them really quickly. In the meantime, you can see my Night Runners are going to be picking off those other Fellbats as they're just positioning here. And the Warp Lightning Cannon is still shooting, but of course my opponent, realizing that, is going to be side strafing with the Claw of Nagash and trying his best to avoid that. But the Fellbats are going to be going in right here, just trying their best to nuke the leadership of my Warp Lightning Cannon, but it looks like it is stable with the help of a couple Rat Ogres. In the front line, the Stormvermin have engaged. You can see they're going to be fighting against the Königstein Stalkers right here. And the Hell Pit Abomination, I'm just going to engage here until the Mortis Engine or some other, appropriate target gets a little bit closer. But yeah, the Hell Pit's having a good old time, stomping some fellow rats. You could also see the Blessed with Filth going down, but the Königstein Stalker is pretty durable. The Mortis Engine, however, is taking a lot of damage, but it is going to be doing some work in my front line. You can see the Stormvermin with halberds are going to be a little bit spooked here. They're still confident at 46 leadership, but the Slinger is doing a very, very good job. So the Rod of Corruption from Skrolk is going down here. Invocation of Nehek from my opponent, also going to be quite good, healing up this formation. But I do have some pretty solid Overwatch, and just to make sure that the Claw of Nagash didn't push through and get onto my Slingers and other threats here, I do get the Rat Ogres and just attack it, and it is taking a beating from those Slingers. And the bats, the fell bats are relatively ineffective. I think it was a bit of a mistake for my opponent to throw, all of his fell bats in there. I think he should have put like one here, one here. You can see the Red Duke on foot does summon a group of skeletons or zombies. It looks like it's going to be zombies on top of my filthy rat, so they're going to have to scurry away. But thankfully they are pretty quick. You can see 48 speed, and we should be able to get away from those guys, no problem. So realizing he did summon those zombies, I summoned a group of clan rats with Lord Skrulk here in the back line, and they should be able to clean up the zombies and keep them from chasing my gutter runners, which is going to be nice. In the meantime, the Hellpit Abomination in the front line is going to be fighting the Red Duke, and definitely isn't probably going to make the best contact, because again, he's not really going to be getting his bonus versus large against the Red Duke, who is infantry size. But you can see the Skaven Plague going down right here and just doing massive damage to these Graveguard and Skeletons and some of these other troops. So definitely an ability that I like to bring against the Vampire counts and other like Horde style factions that are going to go super wide with a bunch of cheap troops. But definitely does some solid damage and chews up those Conic Shine Stalkers, those Skeleton Spears, and some of those other targets. So I do pull back the Hellpit Abomination, making sure it was stacked on top of my spears and not overextending. In the meantime, Rat Ogres and Clan Rats are cleaning up here. He did try and come around the flanks with some Skeletons, so I have to intercept with the Clan Rat Spears, which I wonder who would win that in like a straight fight. I feel like the Clan Rats would probably win that, but I don't know. They both have pretty pitiful stats. But anyways, in the main line, you can see that the Red Duke and the White King are kind of chasing off my Hellpit Abomination, so I decided to pull back with that and just form a secondary battle line here. Balance of Power is a little bit my favorite right here, as Skrulk is leading a very powerful charge in here. Well, not necessarily a charge, but he's leading the boys, doing very good with his Rod of Corruption and the Perpetual Bless with Filths, as well as the Plague abilities, and he's just whacking them with his Sensor, which is definitely solid. Also, something else that's very nice is my Warp Lightning Cannon is back online, but now that the Mortis engine has fallen, so in order to finish it off, I actually used the Libra Bubonicus, which does a ton of damage. So I was able to really nuke that out. I also do pull back this Hellpit Abomination. I'm like, yeah, it can help get rid of these skeletons, relatively quickly, and that's going to be nice to open up the Gutter Runners with Slingers, but there's not too many big targets, so a lot of my missile units like the Warp Lightning Cannon as well as the Slingers aren't going to be terribly useful right now, but those Storm Vermin are actually holding really well against these Graveguard with Great Weapons. I was quite impressed. I mean, they're surrounded almost from like two sides, Skeletons on this side and Great Weapons right here, but the Rat Ogres are basically like a hard counter against Great Weapons. They're going to be able to lay some heavy AP into these Graveguard with Great Weapons, who only have 26 melee defense, so they're not going to be terribly tanky here against these Rat Boys, and we'll see how it goes for them. In the main fight, though, things are starting to turn around. My opponent's definitely picking up some momentum here. You can see the Red Duke with an upgraded Invocation of Heck. His White King, as well as these Zombies and Sternsmen, are actually pushing me back. So the Rat Ogres take quite a bit of damage. The Halberds are holding on. They have 90 models, but despite being at almost like full capacity in terms of their models, they are wavering here at 10 leadership because of the Red Duke, and Skrulk also gets whooped on. So my opponent did use El Sif, and I got a little bit arrogant here. I let Skrulk overextend, and I didn't really think there would be a huge threat. You could also see the White King's activatable ring going down, which did some pretty damn good damage to my rats, and that was something I hadn't seen in a long time. But I was just very grateful that Skrulk actually survived, and in order to save him, I do pull in my Hellpit Abomination. I just, used him in his mass to push back the White King and push back the Red Duke. But my front line is kind of buckling. The Storm Vermin are running here. These ones with 80 models are putting up a good fight against the Sternsmen, but regardless, they're definitely not going to last much longer. And that's pretty much it. My front line really just getting collapsed right there, which was rough. But Skrulk is back. He still has plenty of Winds of Magic, so I'm going to be summoning some Clan Rats here to just send in and hold back my opponent's forces while I regroup. And you can see the bounce power is shifting back towards the middle, so definitely going to be a little bit spooky here as the Vampire counts are gaining some momentum. But I do have the Hellpit Abomination, so I'm like, okay, I'm not going to sit here and fight the Red Duke and this White King on their terms. Let's kind of, grind down my opponent a little bit and let this thing kind of heal up with regeneration, because, it's nowhere near its healing cap, so I have a lot of HP to heal. On top of that, I have some Rat Ogres rallying. You can see my Warp Lightning Cannon is going to be blasting into the White King, but on foot, he's not really a good target. So just using these Slingers with, oh man, that's so ridiculous, like the trajectory of their rock. Just throwing in and actually finishing off these Graveguard with Great Weapons. You can see they have about 10 models left. The Warp Lightning Cannon still just kind of teeing off here, but it's perpetually obstructed because there aren't really too many good targets, like I said. I do get the Clan Rats that I summoned here to come in and fight and help against these zombies, as well as the Night Runner Slingers, who aren't terrible in melee. They're kind of like Gutter Runners with poison in that they have a bit of a dual purpose, but the Red Duke's pushing forward with the Sternsmen, but now that he's pushed forward, I start to follow him with the Hellpit Abomination. So the Hellpit Abomination is going to do pretty well against some of these Sternsmen, especially that Sternsman in particular. They must not like each other, but yeah, the Hellpit Abomination getting in there and getting a rear charge on the Sternsman, which is going to hurt their leadership, but the Red Duke is just going balls deep, balls to the wall, and he's going after Skrulk here. But the Hellpit Abomination punts him even closer to Skrulk. I was like, no, bad Hellpit. So the Hellpit punts him. You get the Libra Bubonicus on him, which does a ton of damage, and this is kind of the turning of the tide. The balance power is now in my favor a little bit. The Red Duke is taking actually some pretty heavy damage from the Help It, who does have Blessed with Fill, so he's going to be poisoning the Red Duke and doing pretty well in that respect. And the Stearnsmen and the other supporting forces, which were pushing up the Duke, are now a little bit in a bit of a tough position, as the Help It Abomination has led him to crumbling. You can see he's at like -60. And it looks like the Red Duke is going to fall to the Help It Abomination. Definitely, that's a very dramatic death, just like falling in front of this mighty beast. The White Kings, on the other hand, are still fighting. My Gutter Runners, or the Night Runners with slings here. They have a nice little surround, and basically Skrulk is just running around like Palpatine and just like cackling in the background like, hey, you can't catch me. But yeah, I was pretty lucky that he survived that frontline engagement. It would have been tough if he had croaked there, but the Stearnsmen are being cleaned up due to, leadership issues by the Storm Vermin and Clan Rats, and just basically being swarmed by the filthy Vermintide. The Help It Abomination is going to be cleaning up the White King. He gets tagged with the Rod of Corruption, but that's not going to do a whole lot. And that's pretty much going to be it. So very well played to my opponent. It was an incredibly close game. We had our artillery, and Skrulk just barely held on there, but I think the build worked pretty well. I do think that having Storm Vermin in the front line is going to be pretty essential, simply because they hold and allow your other pieces to do most of the heavy lifting. Whereas if you go with like Clan Rats or like Skaven Slaves or low tier stuff like that against vampires, it just seems to rout like almost instantaneously, which is a little bit tough. Rat Ogres did well. Help It Abomination was able to hold things down, provide me some much necessary AP, and had the Mortis Ascension been more of a factor and didn't just get picked off by the Warp Lightning and Skrulk's Lieber as well as the Slingers, the Help It Abomination would have been the necessary tool to really like keep that thing honest and make sure it didn't cause too much trouble. So yeah, the Help It Abomination, definitely solid stuff. And for my opponent's army, it was definitely cool. Going a little bit wide with the troops on the ground. I still think Red Duke on the ground or on horseback is going to be better. Even on a Hellsteed, you do have to watch out for Howling Warp Gale, but being able to fly over and drop zombies on top of the Skaven artillery is just game breaking. So I really think you have to put him up in the air, or at least on horseback. But Graveguard with Graplin's not a bad choice. You can get away with those guys against Storm Vermin. Honestly, most infantry do well against like Skaven and stuff. Fellbats, I think you just needed to split the targeting a little bit. I also think having some cav, like some like cheap Black Knights, or maybe some Hounds to just pressure my back line and chase my units, would have been really good for sure. But that's just kind of my feedback. So anyways, very well played to my opponent, OJam. Look forward to running into you again on ladder, and hopefully you guys enjoyed that Skaven versus Vampires game. Have an excellent night, guys, and take care.